Welcome to the Washington Heights Church podcast. We're so glad you're here. Each week, we bring you the latest Sunday message filled with God's Word to help strengthen your faith and deepen your walk with Christ. Whether you're tuning in from home, your commute, or anywhere in between, we're thrilled to have you join our community. So, grab a cup of coffee, find a cozy spot, and let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome to the 11 o'clock service here today at Washington Heights. So glad you chose to join us, whether you're here in person or you're watching online. If today is your first day here and you're in the room, I want to invite you to do something as soon as our service is over, or maybe you and I have never had the opportunity to say hi. Love to meet you right over here on your right and just off the platform there. And we'd like this big room to feel more like family and for us to know each other on a first name basis. So please stop by. I promise won't keep you long, and it truly be our honor and privilege. Well, we're in a series that we've entitled Learning Curve. We're in a book of the Bible called Proverbs, which is all about wisdom, becoming more of a wise person. What is wisdom? It's not just knowledge. It's not just knowing things. It's not just understanding what is true. It's also applying that to life in ways that are helpful, that are mutually beneficial, that are going to lead us forward as we become more wise. Now, if you've been around church, you may have heard that Jesus taught something called the Sermon on the Mount. Well, today we're going to look at the Sermon on the Mouth, a little bit different of a focus there, but we're going to look at the words that we speak, hoping to become more wise with our words. And the reality is there's a lot of opportunity here because we use a lot of words, and there's opportunity for good, there's opportunity for less than wonderful. Let me give you a couple examples. In 1 year, the average person's words could fill 56 books of 800 pages each. That makes me tired just reading that. Here, the average man in 1 day speaks, can you guess? Why don't you turn to somebody around you, see if you can guess how many words the average man speaks? The correct answer is not 10. I heard that over here. It's a little bit higher than that. The average man speaks 20,000 words a day. The average woman, don't shoot the messenger today, okay? Just reporting the facts here. In the previous service, somebody over here said 1 million. It's not 1 million. It's actually 30,000 words a day. Today in America, 55 million people will listen to 400,000 pastors say 1 billion words. We use a lot of words. How do we become wise in the use of our words? And in Proverbs, most of its content is dedicated to wisdom, which we've already talked about. But the next most common topic that is addressed are our words. There's some 120 verses in Proverbs that relate to our speech, to our words, what we say and how we say it. So this is going to be the best 4 hours of your life. No, I'm just kidding. What I'm going to do, we're not going to look at all of them. I'm going to try to group them together so that we understand what it is that is at stake and also how we can become more wise with our words. Here is Proverbs 17:28. Even fools are thought wise if they keep silent, and discerning if they hold their tongues. So in other words, there's a lot of potential there for harm. I think it was this verse in Proverbs that led Abraham Lincoln to say this: it is better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to open one's mouth and remove all doubt. And to say, yep, there it is on full display. Our words reveal a lot. They reveal a lot about, who we are, about what's happening inside of us. Proverbs 13:3 says, those who guard their lips preserve their lives, but those who speak rashly come to ruin. So in other words, what Proverbs is telling us is, look, our words can do one of two things. They're either going to be used for benefit or they're going to be used for harm. Our words maybe are like fire, right? Fire can be used to warm yourself and keep yourself alive in extreme conditions. It can also be used to burn something down and to hurt somebody. And in the same way, our words have the potential to go in a couple of different directions. Our words can get us hired or fired. Our words can start a relationship or end a relationship. Our words can draw our kids closer or push them farther away. Our words can make a friend or an enemy. Our words can get us into trouble or out of trouble. And so what Proverbs gives us is this realistic understanding that, our words are not going to be automatically in one direction or another. Sometimes they can hurt, and sometimes they can help. A couple examples of what Proverbs talks about on both sides of that. Words can wound. Proverbs 12:18, the words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. And there's such a graphic image there, right, of being cut with a sword. And if you get stabbed with that, you can take it out. But what is left there? There is a wound that stays on the other side of being cut with some of those sharp words. I believe that there are some people here today, and you've lived with the other side of some of the words that were said to you. There was a saying a while ago, I don't know if this is still a thing here, but it goes something like this: sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never, what? Hurt me. Anybody believe that's true? I guess we can call the guy who thought that up an idiot because it doesn't matter to him. But I think for other people, those words sometimes really do hurt. I think there's some people here today, and you've heard words like this: ugly, stupid, worthless, lazy, disappointing. And there are portions of your life that have been dedicated to trying to prove that wrong. Or maybe you felt like you've been living your life under the weight of that, and it's like a backpack full of heavy rocks that you can never take off. Words have potential to wound. And just because, I was just joking, or I didn't mean it, there can be a wound that is left there on the other side. Proverbs 16:28, a perverse person stirs up conflict. In other words, it kills community, and a gossip separates close friends. And what the Bible talks about a lot, and I think it is one of the most underrated areas when it comes to sin. What is sin? In the Bible, sin is missing God's mark. It was used as an archery term, to miss the bullseye. And we can think, well, that's lying, cheating, killing, stealing, all those kind of things. Certainly it includes that. You know what is underrated, though, in that whole arena? Is sins of the mouth. And right there it talks about gossip. That's talking about other people in a way that we would never talk to them. And I think we probably all know this dynamic. If somebody else is going to talk to me about somebody else, there's a really good chance they're going to talk to somebody else about me. And I think we know what it's like to be on the receiving side of that. And Proverbs is saying, don't be on the giving side of that. That all that does is destroy relationships. And when we move in the direction of doing those kind of things with our words, there is a fallout, a negative fallout in our relationships. Now, here's the thing, though. As I was even putting this together, I was thinking, it would be so easy to maybe be here today and to say, you go, Pastor, because there's somebody who wounded me, and I hope somebody's feeling really guilty today. Let them have it, and maybe they're sitting next to you and you want to elbow them, whatever the case may be. But we might be on the other side of that. And we might say, oh man, I know that I have done that, and I'm stupid, and I should never do that again. I need to try harder. Let's not do either one of those things. Because I think what we're going to look at today, what it represents is an opportunity for all of us to become more wise and take steps forward. So by show of hands, I want to do a little bit of a poll here. How many people would say that in your life there have been words said to you that were hurtful? Anybody willing to admit that? Pretty much every hand is up. If your hand is up, it's just like last week. We don't believe you because we know that happens in this world. How many people would be willing to say this? You're in church, good place to be honest, that you have at least on one occasion said something that you think was hurtful to somebody else. See, It's all of us, right? So let's not make this about somebody else. Let's make this about all of us who need to take steps forward and become more wise with the words that we speak, because they can wound, but that's not all they can do. Our words can also backfire on the person who uses them. The words of the wicked lie in wait for blood. They're just waiting to spring a trap, but the speech of the upright rescues them. Proverbs 12:13, evildoers are trapped by their sinful talk. Your own words will catch you. You ever heard the phrase, talk is cheap? Proverbs says, no, it's not. It can be really, really expensive, because the words that you speak can actually enslave you and put you in a place that you did not intend to go. You never set out to go there. But boy, once those words are out, you can never get them back in, can you? And so it's a call for us to be wise. And that's why it's good news that it's not all bad news, because Proverbs also says words can nourish. Notice this progression here, this pattern that unfolds. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. And so our words are compared to, right, a piece of fruit, something that is good, sustaining, something that is healthy for us. In Proverbs 18:20, from the fruit of their mouth, a person's stomach is filled. It's compared to a meal that satisfies. With the harvest of their lips, they are satisfied. And then look at this. Gracious words are like a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. And so what are we talking about here? The potential for our words to either produce a good result or a result that can be detrimental and downright painful, that can destroy relationships, break people down, or it can fill them up and sustain them and build them up. So in the time that we have left, let's talk about how we can learn to manage our mouths and how we can have a learning curve in doing that. So I want to group together all these verses that Proverbs talks about, 120 of them, and we're going to talk about 4 things. Here's the first one. Think before you speak. Contemplate before you communicate. So Proverbs 16:23 says, intelligent people think before they speak. What they say is then more persuasive. You know, words can be hard. Have you noticed? I came across a couple examples of that, how sometimes, where the words is really hard. Kentucky Fried Chicken, they have a slogan, finger licking good. Well, they went into China and the translation kind of got things wrong. It translated in Chinese, finger licking good, turned into eat your fingers off. And apparently you can get that in regular or extra crispy, so the choice is yours. Coca-Cola, they've had a slogan, grab a Coke and a smile. That actually translated into Chinese to bite the wax tadpole, which I don't know what that is. Sounds like a 60s band, but I think that was Mott the Hoople back in the day. Jimmy Carter in 1977 was in Warsaw, Poland, and at the end of his speech, he summed it up with these words, I have come to understand your desire for the future. Unfortunately, in Polish, that translated to, I desire the Polish people carnally. That's not what he meant to say at all. So here's what Proverbs invites us to do, is to think before we speak. Engage your mind before you engage your mouth, because it is so easy for us to assume that what is clear in my mind is going to be clear in yours when I communicate it to you. I heard this example. There was a church that on a weekly basis would order 10 dozen donuts and have them available for people. But it was getting into summer and vacation season. A lot of people were going to be away. And so they called the donut supplier and said, hey, next week, let's cut our order in half. So you know what showed up the next week? 10 dozen donuts cut in half, right? Because we assume that it's just crystal clear in our own mind. But there's something in my mind that I put into words. You hear the words, it goes into your mind, and we're trying to have this communication. Is there opportunity for anything to go wrong? Are you kidding me? Is there opportunity for anything to go right? And so Proverbs tells us, think before you speak. Don't assume that people automatically understand exactly what you mean. Engage your mind first. You will have to live with the consequences of everything you say. Ooh, boy, I wish that one wasn't true. right? Because there's a lot of reality to that. Now, here's the thing. You might say, yeah, I've said a lot of things in anger and said some things when I was angry that I didn't want to say. But we can't control our emotions, can we? I mean, our emotions are what they are, and there's a measure of truth to that. But let me give you an example to say we might be better at it than we think we are. So maybe you've been, angry at somebody, and all of a sudden your phone rings, and you've been giving this person the business over here, and all of a sudden, how do you answer that phone? Oh, hey, how you doing? Yeah, what an amazing ability to control in that moment. And I wonder if Proverbs is trying to give us a sense of ownership about that. You're not as out of control as you may want to believe that you are, and you're more in control. And in those moments, you realize that your words have consequences for good or for bad, right? There's some good words that we can speak, and those have great consequences. They might build relationships and create friendships and draw people closer, but they can also separate and drive apart. It is a trap to dedicate something rashly and only later to consider one's vows. Anybody have this issue of saying yes to stuff all the time without even thinking it through? This is telling us choose your commitments carefully. Calculate the cost of things. One of the laws of life is it is so much easier to get in than it is to get out. Anybody know that about debt? It's really easy to get in debt. It's harder to get out of debt. It's a lot easier to fill your schedule full of commitments than it is to clear your schedule and have available space in your life. How many times have your kids, maybe when you said something and you just wanted to kind of, brush it off or put it off till later, but you didn't want to tell them outright no because you knew that would be a battle. And then, so you kind of give a sort of half answer, and then they come later and they say, you said. And I think in those moments we recognize that there is some kind of consequence that comes along with it. So think before you speak and make your commitments carefully. So here's the second thing that Proverbs talks about is avoid the escalation game. You ever been involved in that where there's a disagreement and somebody comes at you and maybe they're a little bit hot and now you one-up them and then they one-up you? And I don't know if this is a personality type, but here's what a soccer coach told me back in the day. Said, here's one thing I know about you. When we're out there and we're playing, if somebody gets you, you're going to get them back even better. And you know what I don't like about that? He was right about that. Somebody pushed me, I'm going to push him back hard. You trip me, I will see you later. And I wonder sometimes in our conversations, in our relationships, there is this sense that, oh yeah, you know what I want to do in this moment? You're coming at me, I want to win. And my goal is to win and to put you in your place and demonstrate maybe my superiority. Proverbs tells us the goal of our relationships, even when there's conflict, is reconciliation. Is that our relationships will grow deeper. But if we're out to win and to prove somebody wrong, I wonder if I could go back in time, you know what I would be doing if I wasn't doing this? I think I'd be a lawyer because I love to debate. And sometimes people bring up an issue, and I don't even believe, the side of the issue that would be the opposite. I just take the opposite side because I want to debate them. And I think when our goal is to win a contest and to prove them wrong, we wind up at a place we never really set out to go to begin with. So avoid the escalation game. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. In other words, a harsh word just ups the ante. And that can go back and forth, and that's not going to end anywhere good. So the next time somebody comes at you, try this. Try a gentle answer and see what happens. And if they're coming at you like they're on fire, a gentle answer is like throwing a bucket of water on that, and the fire goes out. And Proverbs says, that's wise. That's wise. Patience and gentle talk can convince a ruler and overcome any problem. So patience and not being on a mission to win, but when we engage people that way, even a ruler, somebody that we would think is so on a higher level than we are, in a place that's totally different than we are, that there can actually be reconciliation on the other side of that. And we can work through whatever issue there might be. So when that moment comes, you're trying to win or you're trying to reconcile? Because Proverbs says, smart to reconcile. You're foolish if you're trying to win. So here's the third thing that Proverbs talks about in all those verses. Always speak the truth. Always speak the truth. Now, Proverbs talks about many types of dishonesty, but I just want to focus in on the arena that it talks about being honest with each other, being honest with real live people. And why is it that we often shrink back from that? Why is it that we, sense something inside of ourselves that we think they need to know, or how they've treated us or whatever, and we hold all of that back? And I'll tell you, here's that tendency, right? If we're going to be a gossip, I'm going to go talk to somebody else about that person. The Bible says, no, I'm called to talk to that person, and I'm called to be honest with them. But often we don't do that. Why don't we do that? I'll be real blunt with you. Because we're cowards. That's why. And we may assume that on the other side of being honest, that people are not going to like us or respect us. Zach's story was up here before on that yellow couch. I love that story. And there he is, just talking and speaking the truth about himself and where he was. And let me ask you, as you watch that story unfold, did you respect him more or less? And I know the answer. You respected him more. So why is it that when we see somebody else speak truthfully about themselves and own some things that are less than wonderful, we go, that's amazing, that's cool, that is to be respected. But then when we're thinking about that internally, we think, oh, they're not going to like me. They're not going to respect me. Proverbs says, always speak the truth. Whoever winks maliciously causes grief, and a chattering fool comes to ruin. You know what a malicious wink is? You ever had somebody say something, then they kind of wink, and there's that little smirk that often comes along with it? And that's a way of saying, yeah, I said that, but that's not true. I said that, but that's not really what I mean. I said that, but really the truth is the opposite of that, right? It is deceitful. It is manipulative. It is representing one thing, but meaning another thing. Why do we do that? We shrink back because often we are afraid. And I think the other reason why we can shrink back from that is because there's something going on inside of our hearts that we would rather not admit. Have you ever played a little loose with the truth and maybe exaggerated something? Why do we do that? And you know what? Moment of confession, I've done that and I do that. Why? Right? Because I want people to like me and I want people to think well of me, and I'm trying to manage people's, expectations or their understanding of me. And in that moment, what is that about? It is to be liked, which is really born out of pride, which is making it all about myself. And that's pretty ugly. I mean, well, that wasn't a big deal, I just stretched the truth a little bit. I wonder if we dug beneath the surface, we would discover something that's a whole lot more inclusive than just that. When I sit down with married couples who are struggling, who are in a difficult place, I will ask them often, a question that goes something like this. So what do you think you have contributed to the problem? And here's how I know if this is going to go somewhere good or not. When it's all about, well, it's all her fault, it's all his fault, there's little to no hope there. Because wouldn't you agree that when two people are having an issue, it's not 100%, 0%, and I'm not saying it's 50-50 all the time either, but there is something that everybody can own in every moment where we're having a struggle. But if we can't take ownership of what we bring to the issue, I don't know that there's any hope. Because I don't think we're being honest with them, and I don't think we're being honest with ourselves. And so there's a real call for us to be honest. Be honest about who we are. Be honest about what we bring to those issues that we have with other people. It's never all them. It's never all me. But you know what? Can I just own my part? Because the only person I can change in that moment is this person, is me, but not them. And so always Speak the truth. An honest answer is like a kiss on the lips. What in the world is Proverbs talking about there? It's the only time in the Bible it talks about kissing on the lips, and it's in this context. And we might think, well, that's weird and creepy. What in the world is that talking about? There is a cultural thing going on here that gives this real clarity and meaning. In those days, if you were friends or a relationship on equal terms, you viewed that person with great respect, and you are my equal, you have honor and dignity and respect. When those people would greet one another, they would greet with a kiss on the lips. Now, that doesn't happen in our culture, but that's what they did. Now, if you met somebody, maybe for the first time you didn't know them, maybe it was a child, or maybe it was somebody that you were viewing a little bit in a different relationship than being on equal terms, they would greet each other with a kiss on the cheek. And there's some European cultures that still maintain this today with kisses on the cheek. And then if it was somebody who was in a totally subservient relationship, could have been a slave to a master, how would they greet each other? That slave would take a knee before them and would bow their head. And so what Proverbs is telling us here is honesty with each other is like treating people with the God-given dignity and respect that they deserve. And that when we do that, we are forging a relationship of equals, of people that matter to one another. And one is not subservient to the other, but we are on equal footing. And I see the God-given value in you. And we have the opportunity for that relationship to get better and better. See, intimacy is always the result of truth. It's always on the other side of truth. But deceit, manipulation, a lack of truth always destroys relationships. Sometimes I'll sit with premarital couples, and I just did on Thursday, and I'll always ask this question, and they answered it great. But I'll ask this question, so tell me about a time when you guys disagreed. Right, you put two human beings together for any length of time, you're not going to agree about everything. You put a man and a woman together for any length of time, they're not going to agree about everything, right? And so I would think it's pretty easy to talk about that. My wife and I, we could give you 4,000 examples of how we haven't agreed over the years. But I'll ask couples, and every once in a while, not often, but every once in a while, I'll hear this: we never disagree. And I'm thinking one of two things, right? Either you're lying because that's what you think I want to hear, but it's not, or somebody is being way less than truthful. And maybe it's one, and maybe it's both, but something's going on there. That Proverbs says, that's not going to take you to a good place. Intimacy is the result of truth. It's on the other side of truth. Whoever rebukes a person will in the end gain favor rather than the one who has a flattering tongue. What's a flattering tongue? I make up stuff that sounds really good. I don't really mean it. But again, I'm trying to manipulate and manage your understanding of who I am. The only other option we have to being truthful in our relationships is to play games. And playing games gets really exhausting, because you probably have to remember over and over again what it is that you said, and you don't want to change the story. But again, behind that is often this need we have to be liked, which is really rooted in pride, which is all about you. You know, sometimes when we're talking about truth, we'll go there to some degree, and I've heard people talk about the last 10%. That sometimes we'll say things because they are true and we're trying to, just reconcile or grow a relationship. But then there can be those moments in which we hold back maybe that last 10% because we fear that on the other side of that, they're going to move away from us and maybe we're risking it all. But I would say in the context of a trusted relationship with the goal being reconciliation, go the last 10%. And speak truthfully to one another, because there is something so good on the other side of truth. But here's the qualifier that comes along with it. Speak the truth all the time, but speak the truth in love. So truth is not meant to be used like a club that we beat people up with. Have you ever heard somebody say this? Well, I just speak my mind. I just say whatever I feel. I just like to be brutally honest. You know what Proverbs calls somebody like that? A fool. That's a fool. Because we are called to have a boundary around our truth that is always in the context of love. And when we do that, there's a result on the other side of that only truth with love can accomplish. The soothing tongue is the tree of life, but a perverse tongue crushes the spirit. And so even, in the moments when we're called to confront, are you saying that we should never confront anybody? We should never, tell somebody that they blew it? Not saying that at all. I'm just saying that when we do that, what is the goal? The goal is reconciliation. What is the context of it? The context of it is love. But yeah, there are moments we can say, you know what? You blew it. We need to learn the difference between you blew it and I don't like you. Those are not the same thing. And so we need to speak the truth in love. Anxiety weighs down the heart, but a kind word cheers it up. And I don't know about you, I can run for a couple weeks on a compliment. And those things are like life-giving and encouraging. And I've read this, and psychologists have talked about this for a long time, that 11 compliments are the same weight in the human soul as one criticism. So what do we need? We need more encouragement. And so I want to give all of us, me included, a homework assignment this week. That into the world you go, and with the people that you meet, speak words of encouragement. Don't make it up. Don't have a flattering tongue. But speak words that are legitimately encouraging to them. What would it be like if this place, that every time that we gather together, there would be words of encouragement here? Man, I'm so glad you're here today. I'm so glad that I met you today. What would it be like if our words were infused with encouragement? We don't have to build rockets, right? It's not that hard. It's just not that complicated to speak words. But so often what happens is we hold them back, maybe because we feel like, yeah, I'm not getting it, so why would I give it? I don't know what the reason is totally. But here's the thing that I would say in our world today. So many people are having a hard time. So many people are struggling. And words can breathe life into them. Check this out. A person's word can be a source of wisdom, deep as the ocean, fresh as a flowing stream. And there the picture of our words being like a glass of cold water on a blazing hot day. Or somebody who is just dying of thirst, getting that drink that satisfies so deeply. And you know what? I think around us every day are people who are thirsty for words that can be that refreshment. And maybe we can even say water kind of literally sometimes is life. Let me give you an image as you think about that homework assignment and you see the people you're going to see this next week. Here's a guy running a race. He's come to an aid station. Somebody's holding out water or Gatorade. I don't know exactly what's inside of those cups. Back in the day, I would run, and I ran a number of marathons, and boy, these aid stations are like life-giving, as you're doing that. If you just started a marathon and you were fully fueled with hydration and all the calories that you needed, you could go about 16 miles just with what you got in you. But here's the thing, in a marathon, you got another 10 miles to go. And that's a long way. And so along the way, you need to start taking in something. So here's this guy, and if that's kind of a picture of people running through life, and some people are thirsty. And there you are, and you've got in your hands and really in your mouth a cup of cold water to somebody who's thirsty. Words that encourage and inspire and breathe life in. But imagine that guy at that aid station there. Here comes that runner. Oh, well, let me pull that back. Hope you get some more down the road. Be somebody who's handing a cup of cold water to somebody who's thirsty, because they're around us each and every day. And what if this community became the kind of community in our neighborhoods, our schools, our places of work, wherever it might be, that just spoke words that brought life and that were like a cup of cold water. So here's what Proverbs talks about. Think before you speak. Avoid the escalation game. Always speak the truth and speak the truth in love. Now again, I fear that when we get to this point of it and we look at that, every single one of us could go, as I would, yeah, think before you speak. Blew that. I don't know how many times. Avoid the escalation. I play that a lot. Always speak the truth. Yeah, stretch that sometimes. Speak the truth in love. Yeah, it hasn't always been in love. And there is a professor who is actually the leader of Princeton Seminary. His name is Craig Barnes. And he says, please don't take this as a bad dog sermon. And here's what he means. That sometimes you come to church, you get your hand slapped. And at our house, we have 2 dogs, and one of them especially, if I tell him he's been a bad dog, you know what he does? He just kind of turns and slinks away and disappears for a while and then comes back out. Is it okay? Am I okay? And we can come and hear this and see this and think, bad dog, and slink away from here and think, okay, I better try harder and do better, and I got to get my act together. That's not what this is. That on the other side of this, it might be easy to give up and say, well, all right, I can try that for a while. I'm not sure how long my willpower is going to hold out, or just, forget about it altogether. Is there hope with this? And there is. Check out what Proverbs says here in Proverbs 16:23. The hearts of the wise make their mouths prudent, and their lips promote instruction. Proverbs begins to make this connection between the heart and the mouth. Now for us, the heart is often the seat of our emotions, but for them, it was a whole lot more. It was our worldview, it was our values, it was our belief of where life is truly found. And so there's this connection between what's going on in here and what's coming out of here. And Proverbs is not the only one to talk about that. And 1,000 years after these words were written, along comes somebody named Jesus. And he said this one day, a good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. And so if we want to change what's coming out of here, we need to look in here. And the hope is not that we would get our act together and exercise more willpower. The opportunity here is to lean more into the power and the love and the mercy and the grace of God to transform us at a heart level. And sometimes people will say this, they'll just go off and say something really mean and hurtful or whatever it is and go, well, that's not like me. I think Jesus says, that's exactly like you. Because what was in here is what came out of here. Our words reveal our heart. But here's the good news, a new heart is available. And there's a God, when we step into that relationship with him and we say yes to him, he goes to work to make us over. And part of that has to do with the renovation of the human heart. Have you said yes to his grace? Have you stepped into that relationship with him? Because he's done everything that is necessary for you to be forgiven and be called his child. And inside of that relationship, if you have said yes to him, are you journeying with him? We said this last week, that in the book of Proverbs, wisdom is pictured like a path. A path is not something that you just take one giant step and I'm good, right? What is a path? You walk one step at a time and one day at a time. And then after a period of time, you wind up at a different place than where you began. And so maybe if we want to change the fruit that's coming out of our mouth, change the root of what is taking place in your heart. Would you bow your heads together with me as I pray? And so, Lord Jesus, thank you for the goodness and grace you've extended to us each and every day. Thank you for the wisdom that we receive from you. Thank you that we can wind up at a place and as a person that we could never find on our own. but it is the grace, the power, and the mercy of our great God that has reached down to us and invites us in. And so God, when it comes to our words, I pray that this community, this family here at Washington Heights, whether we're gathered together or we're out living our lives in our communities, our work, wherever it is, God, may we speak words of life. May we understand what is at play with the words that we speak. And God, just make us increasingly wise with our words. And may all of that be to your honor and to your glory. And so we ask and pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
We hope you enjoyed today's message. If you found this sermon meaningful, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more people and spread the word. Stay connected with us throughout the week by following us on social media at Washington Heights Church on Facebook and Instagram, and by visiting our website at whc.faith. For more information and additional resources, check out the podcast description below. Thank you for joining us. See you next week.